Ladies and gentlemen, it's that time once again for Inspiring Honesty. From Appleton, Wisconsin, we have our resident atheist of the New Covenant group, Greg Brahe, with his guest host from Binghamton, New York, Bob Greaves. Take it away, guys, and do not disappoint.
That I'm an atheist. Today I will be joined again by Bob Greaves, and we do not have the guest that we were hoping to last week. Unfortunately, things became a little bit too busy in her life at the moment, so we had to reschedule that to a date as yet unset. So in light of that, and in light of recent circumstances, wanted to change gears a little bit for the show today. My wife is a school teacher. And we had, once again, a school shooting here in the United States this week. And I feel that warrants some discussion on many levels. First of all, my heart goes out to all of the families and the friends affected by that shooting and everything that happened. It's a horrible tragedy, and it breaks my heart to think about everything that happened. I think that the best thing that we can do as a culture is to focus on the people, the loss that was that occurred there. Focus on the victims. I think, unfortunately, our culture has a tendency to focus on the perpetrator instead of on the consequences of what they did. We almost glorify these people and remember their names, but do we remember the names of the children or the teachers that gave their lives protecting those children? I don't think that we focus enough on that. As an atheist, you know that I cannot myself say that praying for them should be what we call for. If that comforts you, if that helps, please do pray for these people. Do anything that you can, but my appeal is do something more. Write letters, phone calls. You contact people, send money to a memorial fund, donate your time, your effort, or your energy in some way that creates a tangible effect on the world directly from you. If your prayers do have an intercessor, if they do in some way affect an intercession, fantastic. But we know that there's other ways that we can do it personally, and that would be my appeal as an atheist, to do something that you know will work. And that's what I intend to do in this situation. I wanted to talk a bit today about skepticism outside of the realm of religion, though, to take my atheism off of the table to a degree, and talk a little bit more about how I believe skepticism as a worldview is helpful and it's healthy, and it is a better way of going about things than what we currently do. I'm hoping to promote scientific reasoning across the board. And I challenged myself a little bit before the show. I gave myself a minute to write down all of the things that I think that, including God's, but all of the things I could think of that are crazy things that people believe, or things that are not scientific, not rationally justified in that way. So here goes. Here's the list I came up with, and I'm just going to read right through it. I came up with gods, monsters, magic, witchcraft, miracles, homeopathy, alternative medicine, psychics, auras, mind reading, prophecy, astral projection, aliens, alien abduction, superstition, gambling, prayer, chemtrails and other conspiracies, young earth creationism, and astrology. That was the list of things that were, I guess, a little bit less on my mind. The other one, and one of the things to wax a little bit political on the show today, is the question of guns adding to our safety. And I'm just going to let that one hang for a second and say, Bob, are you with us? Welcome to the show.
Yes, I'm here. Yeah, good to be here. And in light of that, skepticism is you and I would have a different set of skeptic focus, but I could at least agree with you this, that I think that that skepticism is definitely a facet of consideration that is always valid for appreciating something from the standpoint of skepticism, even if that's not the place a person is going to settle. Even for something you believe in, it's good to understand it from a skeptical standpoint. Helps you to see it from outside your own bias, and so I could agree with you that skepticism can be a healthy thing to engage in over everything, but whether or not one should settle in it, I would disagree with that. I'm sure there's a lot of things you don't settle into skepticism. I'm sure you have no absolute proof that your child is precious, but I don't think you entertain any skepticism about it at all.
Well, you'd be surprised.
It just isn't a useful issue there. And there are too many things that we need that are based upon the way we relate. That the truth of the matter isn't the point. It's the reality of the child's existence. And then the fact that they are valuable to themselves and valuable to you, this is good enough, isn't it? It's not as if we need to prove anything.
On that, I'll absolutely agree. I think that we need to make a distinction between things that are I guess I've tried to avoid the term factual claims, but that's the best I can really come up with in this is whether or not my son is adorable is a subjective claim. I would actually argue that it's an objective claim. My son is adorable, and if you don't believe so, you're wrong. But it's a question. It's in the eye of the beholder. It's a question of beauty, of values, of aesthetics, and these are things that can't be answered through the use of skepticism. What I'm advocating for is the use of skepticism in places where it can be. Sorry, what was that?
The subjectivity of it is a fact. It is a fact that we have relationships of people who are, for various reasons that have to do with the nature of the relationship, that there is a value and a preciousness to us. That is, it is a fact that it is an experience that we have, and so it's what I would call the truth that has more to do with its authenticity than its physical whatever. I don't know, but yeah, so you'd wanna argue that is it's a shame, because in a sense when we talk about subjective, we're almost dismissive of it or denigrating, like, oh, it's only subjective. It's not one of these objective things, Well, subjective things are subjective and objective things are objective, and who's to say that they're not in a contest with each other for which one trumps the other. They're different genres in a sense, so.
On that, I think you and I are in certain agreement. However, we do need to consider the fact that I believe that I have an adorable son and a beautiful wife who is intelligent and kind and loves me, and I love her. And that is verified for me on a very regular basis with my interactions with them, but also my interactions with them and the environment around me. I spent time with my wife's parents today. When my family came over, we decorated Christmas cookies at my house all day yesterday, and we all interacted together. Now, if I was in a situation where I was interacting with these people and everybody was looking at me like I was a crazy person and they weren't interacting with those people, a little skepticism might do me a little good, because it's possible that I'm hallucinating. And these subjective experiences that I'm having are absolutely authentic experiences that I am indeed experiencing, but that doesn't make them reflective of reality.
Yeah.
So it's hard to convince a crazy person that they're crazy, is I guess what I'm saying. But it's also hard to convince sane people that their beliefs are crazy. And that's more what I wanted to focus on today.
Yeah.
So
now,
anything on my list that you disagreed with, first of all, Bob?
On the list that, well, yeah, you said you didn't believe in God. Now,
was hoping I could slip that one by you.
Well, you tried. No, I certainly don't believe in the God that a lot of people believe in. So and my being an agnostic theist, my belief in God is is in some ways. I got to be honest with you. It's in terms of the factualism, it's a very weak hedging of a bet. But I'm comfortable with that. I don't feel like, oh no, I have this faith, I have this revelation, and it is so certain, and you just don't get. I don't feel that way about it. Although I am very firm in my faith, I'm firm in my faith because I'm comfortable with it, and I'm comfortable with the fact that as an agnostic, I don't see any proof one way or the other, but I'm comfortable with this conclusion, with this risk, and interpreting my authentic experience in this way. And to me, that's extremely weak, but fine. I'm comfortable with that. I'm not here to prove anything, and so it's. So I'm not that far away from you in a sense, in terms of that. But I would say that I do feel that sometimes we suffer from something that's called, that we sometimes refer to as evidentialism. I believe in evidence, but I think that there are some things for which evidence is appropriate, and I think it's faulty to believe that if anything is true, that there has to be evidence for it. I also think that it would be appropriate to demand evidence for something that one wants to compel. If I believe something and it makes sense to me, but I don't have any proof of it, I just don't. Who am I to compel this on anyone else? If it works for them and makes sense to them, and wonderful. And if it doesn't, hey, that's just that. That's just the way it goes. And I don't need anyone else to join me in that faith in order for me to feel like.
Regardless of whether you need anybody else to join you in that faith, there's potential that people will. As you said, if you can present your ideas and they're convincing to somebody else, regardless of any evidence, or even if it's, say, anecdotal evidence, and that's what a lot of my list revolves around. I want to go back through here. So I think we can obviously skip by gods for today. We've discussed that one. Monsters, magic, witchcraft, those are all considered generally pretty supernatural. Miracles are related to the gods, but here's a few things that are a little bit more commonly believed, and by people who would generally consider themselves to be skeptics. Alternative medicine, homeopathy, and mind you, alternative medicine. I am not here to say that there is no such thing as a remedy that is non-pharmaceutical that can help you in one way, shape, or form. However, to quote my favorite comedian and songwriting comedian Tim Minchin, in his I guess it's a beat poem called Storm. Look it up; it's fantastic. Just Tim Minchin, Minchin, Storm. I'll post it on my Facebook after the show. But this is. From that he says, you know what they call alternative medicine that's been proven to work? Medicine.
Well,
it boils down to that.
I'll be honest with you. I don't trust the medical profession or medical science. Now, it's not that I don't trust science. It's that I don't trust these people. So I'm a skeptic there. I'm not a skeptic of the concept of medicine. I'm not a skeptic of the science, but I'm a skeptic that medicine in the United States is currently maintained and sustained by the actual essence of the science. I think it's sustained and maintained by the science of the money. And I think that has corrupted the integrity of what could otherwise be a very excellent science. So, and I don't believe, some of the homeopathic things that people might talk about, people can believe all sorts of things, based on anecdotes and a lack of scientific evidence. But I do think that a lot of the there are some homeopathic remedies that are definitely very useful, but they're not adhered to by the medical community because they don't have a way of making money from it. So I see
Well, I
the
think that you
medical
might be
science
misusing the
community.
term homeopathic there a little bit. There's certainly alternative remedies of that nature. Homeopathy specifically is the idea that water has memory, and
Oh,
that you can put, say, a trace amount of arsenic or even a large amount of arsenic in water and then dilute it so many times that there is no detectable amount of arsenic in the water, but water will have memory that it was in there, and it can, therefore, due to vibrations or depending on which homeopathic practitioner you're discussing this with. I mean,
okay.
it can
I
affect
didn't realize
you in some
that's how
way.
you thought of it. I totally agree with you. Did you ever see that movie, What the Bleep Do We Know?
I actually haven't. It's been in my Netflix queue for months, but I've not watched it yet.
It's worth watching, but I'll tell you, it is. I'm shocked at the number of people who watch that and think that it has any validity. Um, uh, it is. First of all, although they have a ton of scientists in there who are quoted as saying certain things, they're almost all of them are taken totally out of context. A lot of them were extremely angry when the movie came out to realize that the question they were asked and the answer they gave was juxtaposed in a manner that caused them to appear to be saying things they weren't saying and don't believe and would never have said. And but it basically it's an attempt to take the mysteries of quantum physics and turn them into this almost homeopathic kind of thing. And in that movie is even a section where they talk about water and the way that water responds to words said over it. And the number of people who look at that section and think that it is valid and have no idea how that was actually done or how it can't be repeated, it's amazing to me. That when it comes to water, I'm sorry, it's H2O. This is something that exists in the form of matter, and we can measure a great number of things. And to think that the water has some sort of memory or that strikes me as being strange.
Well, that's what I'm really advocating for here is skepticism on things that skepticism applies to, or should apply to, things that are testable, claims of fact and of I guess claims about reality, such as water has memory, or the words that we speak over water will affect the chemical makeup. These are testable hypotheses. My son, he loves a show for kids. There's two that we watch all the time. One is Super Y, and the other one is Dinosaur Train. And I got to tell you, I'm a big fan of Dinosaur Train over Super Y. Super Y, that's about reading and using stories to help. But Dinosaur Train, there's Buddy, the T-Rex. And at the end of every show, and even within the shows, he talks about hypotheses. And a hypothesis is an idea you can test. And he's a scientific little dinosaur. And he time travels and meets dinosaurs from all around the world. So the show's not entirely rooted in science. But it's just a fantastic thing, I think, to teach children is the way of thinking to when you're going to make a claim, see if it's something that you can verify. If you can test it, do so. I have been guilty of it myself. I get into discussions and debates and arguments on Facebook all the time and on other various social media. And I've been subject to making a claim that I have later learned to be incorrect or unfactual or even urban legend. And the way that I find that out is by looking it up afterwards when somebody asks me, like, where did you learn that?
Happens to know informs you, Hey, don't we all do that? There's not a scientist in the world who hasn't stated something they sincerely believe to have been validated, only later to discover that no, it isn't. Just reading something the other week here about Columbus, and that the European continent was not worried about him falling off the edge of the earth, that the scholars of his day were quite well convinced that the earth was a sphere. But we were taught in elementary school that Columbus ventured out. They didn't know if he might fall off the edge of the earth, off the edge of the
Well, and
desert.
I'm sure there were people who didn't know, but I'm sure Columbus was not one of them.
Yeah, and we have actually even people like Aristotle, who it's a recorded event in his life when he discovered that there's merit to this spherical theory. So that's a long time before Columbus, but you know but yeah, anyway, and just reading up on that, didn't discover that was the kind of thing that because I remember having heard that and having repeated it, but we all do that, but that's why we have peers, and this is one of the reasons why the scientific method involves peer review. Nobody thinks of everything, and even a good critical thinker can only bring out of the hat that which has been stored in there. And there are other people with different hats, and they can look at something and go, oh, wait a minute, and they might identify a variable that we had overlooked, and it changes everything. And wonderful, that's part of the process.
Absolutely. And we do have a viewer comment here. It says, I'm not a fan or a believer of homeopathy. However, there is actual science in the idea of water memory. I'm not saying that it has medical value, but there have been some very amazing experiments with the idea of water memory. H2O is pure water. Most water is not pure water.
That's true.
On that, viewer, I have to say that I have studied at length on this particular subject. It's a subject I've both being a scientist and somebody who's worked in the medical field and has run into homeopathy pushers. I've done some research on it, and there's not a single compelling piece of evidence that was a well-constructed experiment that indicates in any way that water has memory. But don't take my word for it, please. Look it up yourself. Bob, I'm sorry, were you just saying something?
No, I didn't. But I was thinking that I think that something else that we all can do as a mistake, we all do it, is that many times when we see the results of something that has been done, we may not realize to what degree the results we're looking at are random, or to what degree these results might have some other cause or might be involved in a variety of other dynamics, or what we have as a point from which to compare it to. And as a result, it's easy for any of us to draw conclusions from something that we've seen that appears to be compelling without having really gone through all of the things that are necessary to determine how compelling it may be. Just because you did A and it resulted with B, we got to determine, is it the way you did A, or is it A, or was there something else happening simultaneously that we were not aware of, and it only makes it look like A causes B. These are things that the scientific community works on to seek differentiating and determining, and as a result, I think it's very easy for all of us at one time or another to see the results of certain things that are done and find it to be interesting or compelling, when really it is a merely anecdotal, random, inconsistent, and what have you.
Well, and this is a point that I wanted to make here, is that being a scientist, as I so frequently refer to myself, does not make me infallible in any way. And in reality, it makes me acutely aware of all of my fallibilities and all of my failures to understand. I can tell you that going through school and designing experiments and attempting to do research on my own was one of the most frustrating experiences I've ever gone through, because I would come up with something that it was fantastic, and I would really be proud of everything that I had thought of in this situation. And I would show it to my advisor and go, look at this. I've thought of everything there. This is foolproof. This is, you can lock that one up, throw away the key. And he'll say, you didn't control for that. Come back to me, see if you can come up with anything else. And within within minutes of looking at it, a new set of eyes could tell me all of the, not all of, but at least one thing that I was completely missing. So the concept of control in science, controlling for all of the variables, is one of the most difficult and frustrating things that even trained and very experienced scientists can do, which is why peer review is so important, is that nobody has the wits about them to control for every single possible variable in a situation. It's only together that we can come as close as humanly possible.
It's a process, and it's a useful process. Yeah.
Well, and there's some experiments that simply are not controllable as well. With that, I wanted to get a little bit outside of the medicine, because that one does have fantastic ones. But let's talk about things like prophecy or superstitions or, I don't know. Yeah, those ones, or prayer, another really good one on this subject. Prophecy, anybody who's seen The Matrix has seen the scene, sorry for all those scenes, where the Oracle says, "Don't worry about the vase," and Neo, the protagonist, turns and adjusts himself, and he knocks over a vase, and he says, "You knew," and she said, "What's really going to get you later is, would you still have broken it if I hadn't said anything?" I mean, it's impossible to control whether a prophecy is self-fulfilling in a way, in every way. That it may be that even by attempting to avoid something, you in fact cause it to happen.
In the Matrix, this is actually not a real prophecy. I'm getting an echo here for some reason. But in the Matrix, that's not actually a real prophecy. The Oracle is somebody who has access to the previous times that that they have gone through this loop. And we learn through the process of the movie that they've done this many times, and it's worked out the same way almost every time, but they're hoping to maybe get it to work out slightly different this time. So, the Oracle seems to have an awareness that this is the way it's gone, umpteen times before. So that, if you watched somebody throw a rock at a particular kind of window and it smashes the window, and then, later you see that rock headed toward the window, but it's the first time everyone else is aware of it you go, that window's about ready to break, smash, how did you know? But I liked The Matrix. I thought that was cool in the way that they did that, and particularly in terms of the prophecy and the Oracle. It gave it a spiritual angle that was in some ways, I think, dismissed and diminished by the fact that what was actually going on with these people was not access to some sort of otherness, but they had some sort of access to previous trips through the loop.
It's an important distinction. That factor is that if something has been repeated, and if you have watched the repeated results of this going on over and over, there's the flip side of science, is that not only can we test something that
I can't hear what you're saying.
Did happen to see if this or something was the cause of it, but once we've done that, we can pretty accurately project the likely consequences of similar things in the future. There's
Gentlemen,
reasonable projections.
we're going to have to take a break. There's something going on with the audio. Audience, be patient. We'll be back in just a moment. We're going to work this out, and we hope you're enjoying the discussion. But sometimes things just don't go according to plan. I prayed and I prayed, but it just didn't work out. Don't be so skeptical, Greg. Sometimes things just don't work. They can't hear you, Greg. You can talk all you want. They can't hear you. Let's play some music and take a break. Bring me down. All right, guys, we are ready to get started again. We're hoping for the best, but Skype is sometimes very, very cantankerous. We're going to put our skepticism on it later and see if we can figure out the problem. Thanks for your patience. I'll hand it back to you, Greg.
Thank you. Cantankerous, I like that word.
Yeah.
That's
By the way,
try to work in my vocabulary.
speaking of prayer, I would want to argue that we don't, I don't think that the traditional concept of prayer is necessarily clearly understood. If I pray for others, I don't know that it's going to make any difference to God in a sense, but it might make a big difference to me. And I think that by praying about things, talking to God, much like when you're talking to a therapist, it helps you kind of work through what you need to do. And so I think that sometimes prayer is really about, giving voice to something and then figuring out, by having done that, now you know what you need to do. So that could be, in a sense, what happens to it. Also, I don't know what we, that necessarily that if prayer does anything, that it's necessarily God that's doing it. Is there any level at which spiritually, what we are as entities, that we actually have an influence on each other's well-being? Or I don't know, and I certainly don't have any scientific evidence of it, but I'm not entirely ready to count it out. Although theologically, I find it odd to think that prayer has anything to do with trying to talk God into doing something, as if he's, very stingy, and not going to be nice to people unless we ask him to,
Well, you're not going to get a lot of disagreement from me on any of those. I actually absolutely agree on the question of prayer as a personal reflection, meditative benefit, having the introspection that prayer offers, or that meditation offers, is obviously something that people can benefit from. But the question to that is, does that have anything to do with the reality of who the prayer is to? I mean, you could have the same exact results as long as you had the same sincere belief and you were praying to a toaster. And with that, I mean, that would be one way to control for it. You'd need to have the sincere beliefs, but this is why things like prayer are very, very, very difficult to control for. But they've tried. There have been
You're not going to get anybody
studies
to sincerely believe in a toaster. Yeah.
Well, I mean, you may not be able to, but that doesn't mean that somebody can't.
Right.
And remember that any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. So you take a toaster into a tribal society, and especially there's now machines that will bake. They'll take raw ingredients, they will mix them in the right proportions, bake bread, slice it, and toast it for you. That's a pretty fancy toaster, and that would, I'm pretty sure, impress enough people that they may, in the right societies, may revere that with the same level that some people do gods currently. So,
Sure.
but I guess what I'm talking about is the ability to control. We got a viewer comment: diehard Battlestar Galactica fans have strong faith in toasters. I do a lot of sci-fi. Battlestar never one that worked for me.
Yeah, and I'm as a lover of Rickenbackers, I like toasters too. But that's what they call the pickups on them. They look like toasters.
All right. I also don't know much about guitars, so I do have to say though. I mean, that's on the subject of prayer. There have been studies that have tried to control for the effects of prayer. Now, there's multiple kinds of prayer. There's prayers of thank you, or prayers of thanks. Those obviously are not testable. They don't have an effect that anybody's hoping for in a direct way. There's prayers of general grievance without having any real other effect. But there's intercessionist prayers. There's prayers that are specifically asking for an intercession by a divine or some sort of greater being that would be listening to do something. And those are prayers that are testable. And
And I don't think the tests have done well.
I would agree. I mean, when you look at, do you mean test as in how they've tested it? They've not been done well, or they haven't done well as
The
far as their
outcome
results?
doesn't speak well for the reality of intercession.
You'd be right on either account, in my opinion. From what I've seen, it's real difficult to make any sort of claim that intercession prayers work in any way. However, this is one of the things that we need to consider as far as how it's controlled. What they've done is taken large groups of people and asked them to pray for strangers or for family members, and they've conducted research with across different denominations, different groups of entirely different religious sects. But they've tried to control in as many different ways they can for who is praying, for the level of association that they're praying for, and what kind of intercession they're praying for. And those things have not produced any sort of direct results that are anything statistically significant. But they have, interestingly enough, seen some strange situations happen when you tell people that they're being prayed for by these. I mean, it's another way to control for. It's the placebo effect. If a person is aware they're being prayed for, that may help. In many studies, it's actually shown to hurt, which is strange enough. But
evangelists have actually discovered that if they tell people they're praying for them when they send in their money and their donations, even if they toss these letters in the garbage, wow, this helps to bring in the money.
Mm-hmm. It works. That the thought of somebody praying for you can be comforting or it can be distressing. So they've seen mixed results on that, but they have seen there are statistically significant results in one way or the other from people knowing about it. However, here's some of the control issues that are impossible to control for.
Yeah.
Say I ask you to pray for me tonight, and I say I haven't been sleeping, I haven't been eating, I need prayers from all of our viewers. I have no idea how many viewers that we have, but I know that at least you, Bob, would do it. You'd pray for me. So that's at least one positive prayer. However, I don't know how many people I've angered over the years either, and how many negative prayers I might have coming at me. So maybe there's a check and balance, or maybe there's the balance sheet of sorts, that there is a God sitting and weighing these. And well, I've gotten 20,000 negative prayers for him today, and only 5 positive prayers. He's not sleeping again tonight. That's how it's going to work. Mind you, I'm sleeping fine, but we can't control for that. That's something we simply don't have the information that's needed. So these are we control to the best level that we can, but even so, there's simply not a way that we can do it.
What a way to mismanage one's creation, though, to let people kind of vote for the well-being of somebody else. Although, there could be something to the fact that there is there may be an energy out there that we just don't, physically understand. There may be. So, I would tell you this, if you were to ask me to pray for you, I definitely would, but it's not as if I felt like praying for you is going to somehow convince God to do something he wasn't otherwise going to do. To me, it would just be sharing with God the things that are concerning me, and that if this is going to do anything, it's possible that simply you're knowing that I wish you well, that I'm wishing that you go through. I mean, I prayed for you, when this recent relative passed away, that there would be peace, that the family would be able to settle into the meaningfulness of this life, and the reality of the loss and the comfort you can find in each other. But does that do anything? I don't know. Maybe all it did was, now that you know about it, that might be touching. Maybe it helped me be more empathetic. I don't know. These are some benefits, but the actual metaphysics of what's going on, I gotta be honest with you, I don't know. It doesn't keep me from praying, but I just don't feel this. I don't have the same concept of what prayer is to defend it as being some sort of the power, the magic. that strikes me as being just a Christian form of witchcraft.
We have a viewer comment here. It says, if God knows what we need to pray for, or I'm sorry, what we need before we pray for it, then an effective scientific experiment on prayer is as likely to demonstrate that prayer makes no difference as it is to demonstrate that it makes all the difference. And once again, it's something that's impossible to control for. You're absolutely right, viewer. I can't say anything that is, or I cannot see anything that is wrong in that statement. I wanted to make a quick point on prayer as well, coming from an atheist position, is that I've seen a lot of somewhat more militant atheists say things like, don't pray for me, or your prayers are worthless. I don't take that position. I don't think that prayers affect on any sort of metaphysical level the makeup of the universe in some way, shape, or form. But there's two kinds of situations where I've been told somebody will pray for me. And one of them, and sometimes I'm told that somebody has prayed for me, such as, Bob, that was very touching. Thank you. And there are plenty of people that have told me, even just finding out that I'm an atheist and concerned for me that I don't know God, I don't have a personal relationship with Jesus, or even concerned because they do have a belief in hell doctrine that I will be going to hell, and they don't want that. And have told me with a sincere heart that they will pray for me. That is touching. That is beautiful. That is nice. It is pleasant. And I don't understand how anybody can take any offense from that. However, the other kind, and the one that I hope that our viewers don't do, but if you've ever caught yourself doing this, try to think about it for just a second. I can't tell you how many times I've had somebody use the term "I'll pray for you" as an insult or a way to end a conversation in a triumphant or a humph.
God is going to fix you. Yeah, God is going to fix you. Yeah.
Yeah, it's, oh, you're an atheist? Well, I'll pray for you. And please don't do that, people. It's a bad thing. And even if your God does exist, I'm pretty sure your God would be ashamed of you acting like that. Let's not do that. We got another viewer comment here. Thank you, viewer, for this one. It says, "You're such a kind and loving atheist, Greg. Perhaps God will spare you in the coming apocalypse." So perhaps as well. Mind you, my son, he turns 2 on Thursday. And Friday is the prophesied end of the world. Just throwing that out there.
Yeah.
We may
Did you see that Oreo cookie thing that's been going around? Did you see that?
I've just seen the image that the Oreo looks similar to the calendar, but I don't know any more of the story than that.
Basically, it says the Mayans are predicting that the world is going to end on the 21st, but according to the Oreo cookie, everything's okay.
Right, and that's perfect. Hey, I'm a bigger fan of Oreos anyway. From what I understand, that's actually an Aztec calendar too. That's the best part of this entire urban legend. But once again, it comes down to fact checking and to skepticism and to looking into things from the best objective position that you're capable of. There's a few other things that are a little bit more difficult to use skepticism on, like conspiracy theories. Because one of the things with conspiracy theories is every answer that you can give to them does nothing but bolster it. I mean, that's beyond skepticism. It's cynicism. That's exactly what they want you to think.
It's also way too simplistic. Have you ever studied military strategy and stuff like this, or military games?
To a small degree, but not much.
If there was ever a real conspiracy, and I'm sure there have been, it's not going to be the sort of thing that we're going to be able to necessarily deal with unless somehow it splits wide open from the inside, because real conspiracies don't work the way these conspiracy theorists tend to put it together. They're putting slot A and tab B and this means and a real conspiracy is done in a manner where things are provoked so that other people do them, or people are doing things that they don't realize what the outcome of it is going to be, and they're not the least bit aware of it. And so that there's just no way to really know what's going on, and an excellent strategy for doing that is it's just it doesn't even really take. I mean, you can never know exactly what's going on, and so there's a. I mean, probably lately the biggest conspiracy theories being that with the 9/11, the buildings falling, they look like they were being demolished. I've looked at them and I don't understand how they could have fallen the way that they did. I don't know what's going on there. I don't know how it was done, but I can see a number of ways that it could have been done as a conspiracy without anybody who actually did it knowing that's what they were doing. But at the same time, how do you prove that? There's just, to me, it is spinning your tails into the air, and not going to get anywhere.
Right. There comes a point when you're looking at speculation and conjecture as self-edifying truth, and when you start to throw out conspiracy theories, you have to recognize that when you've built in it's just like God hypotheses that say, well, of course it's undetectable. That's God is invisible. He's undetectable. If you test him, he knows he's being tested, and therefore will avoid your tests specifically to spite you. The intangible, the undetectable, is indistinguishable from the non-existent in that respect. And the same is true of a conspiracy theory. If somebody says, well, there's no way you could be sure of it, of course. Here's this little anecdotal story, here's this little bit of evidence over here that is in some cursory way related to this situation, and here's somebody's idea that ties it all together. There's no way to debunk that is not going to simply strengthen that person's opinion.
Things may come to light later. And for example, when the democratic nation of Iran fell apart, and we get the Shah involved. Nobody knew for 26 years that revolution was actually designed by the United States and Great Britain, and we didn't know that 26 years. In the sense that was a conspiracy that finally came to light. But look at that, 26 years was only because certain documents came out that we discovered it and found it to be true. A lot of people were outraged. But, to me, any real conspiracy, chances are that's the way it's really going to go. And if it, that nobody's going to really know. And there isn't much you're going to do about it. And people who are going to plan and plot and can push the right buttons are going to do it, so.
Bob, we are out of time. So I need to wrap up here real quick. I'm sure I'm going to upset Joey because he's already given me 0 minutes left. But I just wanted to close with this. I opened today mentioning a little bit about the issue of the week for me is that of gun control. And I try not to get or to pontificate on subjects like this on the show. I don't want to get political on that. But the question that I have for you is, are your opinions on subjects of that nature, your political positions, your ideological positions, are they testable? Are they questions that can be answered? And if so, have you looked at the answers? I know when I look at the questions of gun violence in the United States, the questions that come to my mind are those that are advocating so much for gun freedoms, is that guns keep us safe, they protect us, that they keep us from government violence, they ensure our freedom, and in every way that I can see, according to the numbers I've found, those are not the case. And that's my moment of pontificating for the show today. I encourage you to look at these things yourself, not necessarily on this issue, or on other issue, or on that, or any other particular issue. But please, if there's something, an opinion that you hold, and it's controversial in any way, step outside of yourself for a second. Look at it from an objective viewpoint and say, does this make sense according to the numbers? Is my opinion consistent with reality? Or is my opinion consistent with my opinion? And I think that just that simple question can improve so much about the way that we interact with the world around us, that everybody should be doing that a little bit more often. So this has been Inspiring Honesty. Thank you, Bob, for joining us, and thank you, viewers. We will see you again next week at 6 p.m. Don't forget, stick around for The Unconventional Pastor right after this show. And then, of course, The Place, where Alan Darley is going to be joining us, the first guest that we had on this show. And Bob, you'll be reappearing for that one, right?
I will be.
All right. Well, have good shows.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, stick around. You are not going to want to miss the provocative, the poignant, the interrogative, unconventional pastor coming up. So stick around, or you may wonder for the rest of your life, did I miss out on a life-changing conversation? Stay tuned.